All right, we are back with more NFL coverage, and in this one, I'll be covering the Thanksgiving Day action. Great time of this year, of course, to sit down, be around family, eat some good food, and watch some good football, as John Madden, the late John Madden, would put it so eloquently in his own words, of course. We're not just on this day having all these broadcasts cover the game action itself, but also, since his passing, honor him and his legacy, told by, a few stories from other people who were close around. They had one for NBC, for example, with Andy Reid narrating a little bit of a tale about him for others who may not have necessarily known about his career as a coach. Things like that to just keep, that element of things going, even with the man not really, of course, being here to tell his own story, but still trying to keep the name as fresh as ever and not lost on, future generations of potential NFL fans. So that's always a respectable aspect of things. But of course, aside from honoring his legacy, you can't not have football on. And we would get that starting out with mentioning Fox and their horrible display of acting out a scene where Lions and Packers fans clash. Just some mediocre acting, to say the least. But Lions and the Packers yesterday. So the Lions were coming into this having only broken their Thanksgiving Day drought in terms of the losses that they've accrued on the holiday. They came into last year facing off against the Bears, losing their last 7, and then managed to get a win all because Matt Eberflus was a fucking idiot and just chose not to call a timeout for some reason. But they've still come into this one losing 7 of their last 8 on Thanksgiving Day, which is pretty fucking wild considering that they almost always get that kind of attention. But, they had a few more reinforcements in this one. Aiden Hutchinson, for example, was coming back, and he's continued his hot start. He has the most sacks for a Lion entering yesterday's game at 37.5 in their first 50. There's a clear reason why he got the contract extension and the very specific time he did. It will be a battle of dynamic edge rushers between him and Micah Parsons, of course. But the Lions, if they wanted to extend this and also not drop a full-blown tiebreaker to the Packers this season, they were going to have to find creative ways to get around that and try to stick to their identity. And I think a big part of the entire mentality for Green Bay this season was to kind of flip the script in the narrative in that aspect. I think in both Lions games last year, both of them did come down to the wire. Well, at least the one on Thursday Night Football did. A different one, it wasn't as close, but it wasn't a full-blown blowout. Nonetheless, Lions dictated the pace in both of those games, established ball control early, and really just got the Packers to make some untimely errors in crucial moments. And they swept them last season. Packers already came out with a statement by getting after the Lions and Jared Goff in the exact way that they did in the season opener and holding a dynamic Lions offense to just 13 points in the game. Detroit knew they couldn't replicate that if they wanted to stand a chance here. And it did start off that way, although, granted, they did suffer a huge loss early on one of their drives. You see, after the Packers were forced to settle for a field goal, despite establishing some very good balance on their first possession, it would be the Lions who would lose Amon-Ra St. Brown pretty much on the first run from Jahmyr Gibbs, which was limited as it was. But on a block away from the action, you had Amon-Ra St. Brown just blocking out wide, not really suspecting that anybody would be coming his way. And as he's continuing to engage in that, his ankle gets rolled up on. So he steps out of the game and would effectively be ruled out via the broadcast with an ankle injury. Per an Adam Schefter report, he could also potentially miss time, which would definitely suck for the Lions. And it hurt them immediately in the moment. Like, they got after him in the same way. They understand that when you can speed up Jared Goff and make him uncomfortable in the pocket, not give him the time he would need to make quality reads, he's going to crumble more often than not. Like, immediately, you had Parsons getting back there. You had Xavier McKinney get in there on a safety blitz, along with Isaiah McDuffie, just completely wrecking him. And honestly, spitting image of this was on a later play where Jared Goff is literally just dropping back in the pocket, not suspecting anything. And then as soon as he turns over, he tries to brace himself for Micah Parsons coming out of his peripheral line of vision here. And his face just lights up like that in absolute shock and potential agony. That said it all about how they got after him in this one. And it left them especially vulnerable in the first quarter, where they just could not stay on the field offensively. I mean, by that moment, the Packers had already done exactly what they needed to do. You give this Lions offense enough time, and they're going to slice and dice you and gash you down the field as much as they want to on a consistent basis. They did not get the chance to do that. And in fact, they only mustered up 3 minutes and 59 seconds of time of possession in the first quarter, which seems pretty unreal for your standard Lions offense in this day and age. Meanwhile, the Packers, even with that field goal, started to wear down that defense with their long drives. You know, they opened that one up almost 6 minutes long, and while they would be forced 3 and out, with Amik Robertson actually pulling out some good coverage on Dontavion Wicks, they still managed to get the ball back and then eventually get themselves in scoring position. Now, their rushing attack was a little bit cleaner, not by much, than the Lions, especially with them being able to establish the kind of blocking stunts that they had. And this one was no different. They got Josh Weil right out on 3rd and 2 to go account for Alex Anzalone, and his ass gets completely impact blocked. Josh Jacobs veers to the outside and gets a 29-yard rushing gain off that. There's just little situations like that that they consistently won at in this game. And also, when it comes to the Packers, key difference for them, and I guess kind of relating it back to what they intended for this season, was truly beating the Lions at their own game. Because not only did they establish ball control, and not only did they have a pretty devastating rushing attack in this one, but we always ask what Dan Campbell would do on 4th down. Niggas got beat at their own game. Now, the first one is the most logical, rational one to take into account. I will say that. But still, it's like that was almost a deflection on the part of Thomas Harper. And this is where we have to talk about Brian Branch a little bit. Now, yeah, the game he had overall was pretty solid, especially as a run stopper tackler. And he was definitely getting in there for some solid pass deflections, don't get me wrong. Like, for example, one nearing the end of the game, he managed to get a great stop initially on Christian Watson on what would prove to be a key 3rd down, and that would eventually lead into the Packers having to go for it all on 4th. But there were still just moments in coverage, especially where it looked like he just got caught in a trance repeatedly. Like that touchdown to Romeo Dontavion Wicks, I should say. Man, he's guarding this area, and then out of nowhere, I don't know what he's seeing. Maybe he did honestly lose track of the football, but when you are trying to run stride for stride with a receiver like this, and you just automatically stop, it looks weird. And it gave Dontavion Wicks all the room he needed to make what would be a pretty impressive catch. Although Thomas Harper still had a good amount of hustle to just barely miss out on forcing an incompletion. But by that point, he'd already had 2 feet in. That's a touchdown. Boom. Then you get into this situation where the Packers would score yet another touchdown on 4th and goal, not relating to Brian Branch this time, but still just showing a problem with the entire secondary. Because when it came to guarding these guys off swishes, they couldn't do it, especially in these key downs. Like, you have Reed Jr. and Robertson, I suppose, trying to figure out who's guarding who on this play, and Robertson just gets completely caught on the pick route, leaving Dobbs with enough space to catch a fucking free throw, essentially, from Jordan Love for the score. And that would be the first time for the Packers since 2004 where they garnered multiple 4th down touchdown plays. And that happened in just a matter of 2 drives. Brian Branch also, I don't know, like, we had this play over the seam where he just gets caught looking and Jordan Love just throws it right over his head, getting caught out of position for absolutely no reason. And then not to mention the final play of the game, what would be the final key play of the game, you get boxed out by Dontavion Wicks for the game-sealing 1st down at that point, essentially. So I don't know. It was a little bit of a mixed bag. It wasn't terrible, but by goodness, from a player who I've said is a pretty damn good and versatile safety, a lot of that just wasn't as clean as you'd like it to be in this one. I will say, though, to make a different point, that turnover, the touchdown rather, should not have stood. Because Matt LaFleur, sneaky ass motherfucker. Like, we got on Kirby Smart for doing the same shit in a college game. And you mean to tell me that refs allowed this man to get away with saying that he called a fucking timeout before one of the Packers' offensive linemen got a false start on that play that would have prevented them from even thinking about going for it on 4th down? Like, that was bullshit. That was bullshit, dude. Like, timeout my ass. You can clearly see on the replay, they slowed it down several times. And, like, dude, the lineman literally moves before LaFleur even thinks about motioning to call a timeout. That was some BS. And no, ultimately, it did not affect the outcome of the game. The Lions had their chances and missed repeatedly, especially in that 1st quarter. But, you know, that's still something that just can't happen, especially when you consider that the Lions started charging back with the contributions of Tom Kennedy for some reason, who caught his first NFL pass since 2022 and actually ended up being a major player for them at some points. And also Jameson Williams, more expectedly. The man was catching passes at angles, utilizing the speed to the best of his ability, while also trying to polish his route running game. But this touchdown from him, all he needed to do was make a man miss, and while the tackle attempt was okay from Carrington Valentine, at the same time, Jameson Williams is just too quick on his feet, and he scorched that defense for a 22-yard score off of an RPO to still make this a 3-point game getting into halftime. And Jared Goff, despite the turnover on downs to start off the 3rd quarter, would go on a clean tear pretty much up until this 3rd quarter, getting another touchdown pass to Isaac Tisla from 17 yards out. It was on a roll for a little bit. But even with Jameson Williams stepping up, there were still some issues with that because the moment that this ball was dropped by him and also thrown behind him by Jared Goff, both of them were completely frustrated. And if they would have gotten that, because again, that's the identity of this team. You ain't going to stop them from going for it on fourth down, right? This is in Packers territory. And while they would get the stop afterwards, I don't know. I feel like that kind of killed their momentum a little bit. It also broke Jared Goff's completions streak. He, since starting the game off 0-3, had completed at least the last 12 passes in this one. And it wasn't even him needing to throw the ball a ton, although it probably should have happened with my next point in question. But, I mean, like, he was rolling. Don't get me wrong. Still, at the end of the day, when your defense is out there for long enough, like, they're eventually going to crumble. Dontavion Wicks, as I said, was just a beast for the Packers in this game, getting his first pair of touchdown catches on the year in this one. And not to mention Christian Watson. Oh, Christian Watson. You know, they had brought up a really good point that he's kind of become less reliant on his deep threat ability. But that doesn't mean that you still don't account for that man over the top. That man is still a flat-out flyer down the football field. And Amik Robertson would get a great understanding of that. He gave him all the leverage he needed. He didn't even try to jam him or anything. Christian Watson just ran straight by him. Then, not really a push-off, but, created a little bit more space to just catch and run for a 51-yard touchdown score. Wild. And, I don't know, ultimately, all of that consistency and relentless pressure put on the Lions by the Packers, especially in key downs, will lead them to victory in this game. Also, besides all the talk about the pass rush that consistently got them in this one, how about their ability to limit the big gains in the rushing attack as well? Because by volume, the Lions very much tried to run the football. We can't sit here and act like they didn't. However, they were severely limited. Especially when you look at Jahmyr Gibbs. Yes, they've referenced the stat that he has not put up the greatest games in the world against the Packers over the course of his entire career. In fact, he may look outstanding against pretty much every other team in the league by all accounts. When it comes to playing the Packers, they make him look a lot more human in this sense. And that did not change in this one. Now, yes, he had a few runs where he's doing what he does best in terms of getting out in space, utilizing his speed, and adding a little bit of blend with some power in that as well. But there were other situations where he just got swarmed up completely. Michael Parsons can be a good run stopper, but it wasn't just him. There's also Evan Williams getting work done in run support. You had the backers continuing to make some great plays between Edgerrin Cooper, oh boy, and also Quay Walker at points. Also Isaiah McDuffie. Like, I don't know what it is, where this came from exactly, but he has been a player that's kind of stepped up for them tremendously over just the past couple of games. So you have to give him credit there as well. And not to mention, the job was made a little easier on the secondary by the fact that Amon-Ra St. Brown was out, while they still did struggle with Jameson Williams, of course. It could have been a lot worse. They hung in there. They, for the most part, did not make it so easy on Jared Goff when it mattered. Yeah, they allowed him to creep back into some things, of course, but never too much for the Lions to think for even a split second that they really had any control at all. even if the momentum was pushing in their favor at times. And when you can throw multiple bodies at him like that, even if he's not reliant on his power more than his speed, it did wonders for them. Like, there was a specific play where he has one of the Packers linebackers coming at him through the gap. So he tries to reverse course to the left side of the field. And for a second, it looks like he's got room to make this work. Yet, he sees something. He had to have seen something. I would have loved to see a replay of that specifically. Because whatever he saw, it wasn't convincing enough for him. So he tries to reverse course again. But then you have a completely different wave of Packers defenders on that side, trapping him. And boom. That kind of effort defensively, even if it did not create a greater than one score difference in this one, when you are in a game that is as physical and as much of a rivalry at this one, that'll go a tremendous way. And ultimately, the Packers would win it 31-24. Also, a quick note, this wouldn't affect the game either, but at least the Lions, with one of the crucial stops that they did pick up defensively late, they still had a fighting chance. But it's like, I don't know. Whenever you are constantly playing from behind and struggling to get back into the flow of your game, because it hasn't just been the Packers that have done that to them, especially as of late. And with the way that some of these things have gone, the Lions could be in a much worse spot right now. Now they're in danger of missing the playoffs entirely, as of the latest playoff picture. It'd be pretty weird to see. But between failing to have figured that out and also potentially having Amon-Ra St. Brown out for some time, that could get a little dangerous. At least they were given some sense of karma for their no call on a false start. Because while one of those stops would potentially be a PI at the same time, if you could let Matt LaFleur get away with that, I mean, come on, bro. Shit's crazy. Anyways, as for the numbers really quickly, Jordan Love had 234 passing yards and 4 touchdowns and no picks. He is tied with Brett Favre with the most touchdown passes on Thanksgiving Day in Packers history. Josh Jacobs had 17 rushes for 83 yards in this game. Add to that really quickly in a single game, not all-time career. Even though, again, they've mentioned that Jordan Love has consistently been turnover averse and just a complete dog on Thanksgiving by performance standards. So that's fair enough. Dontavion Wicks would have 6 receptions for 94 yards and 2 scores. Christian Watson would have 4 receptions for 80 yards and a touchdown. And defensively, man, I don't know. Like, especially when you look at Isaiah McDuffie having 12 sacks and 2 TFLs in this game, Evan Williams and Edrin Cooper both adding 8 tackles, and then also Micah Parsons with 8 tackles, 2.5 sacks, and 3 TFLs. He would become, as well, the first player in NFL history to have at least 12 or more sacks in each of their first 5 seasons, while leading the Packers, in this case, to have their first season sweep of Detroit since 2020. Even when this specific iteration of the Lions squad was at their absolute worst. The fact that they hadn't done that is wild, but hey, they get it there. Fine. Jared Goff had 256 passing yards and 2 touchdowns on 76.9% completion. There are a lot of coulda, woulda, shouldas here. But ultimately, in key downs between 3rd and 4th downs, they had to be better. And they probably would have liked a little more effort in the rushing attack to establish their will. Like, funnily enough, Jared Goff, a random scramble from him would actually prove to be their longest run of the day. That shit's not normal. Yeah. Jahmyr Gibbs would have a combined 23 touches for 84 yards. Well, 86 yards. And no scores. David Montgomery had a rushing touchdown on 32 yards and 8 carries. And Jamison Williams had 7 receptions for 144 yards and a touchdown. Isaac Tesla had 2 receptions for 35 yards and a score as well. And, oh boy. So, try this one for size. Not only in this game would Tom Kennedy get his first reception since 2022, but Ross Dwelly, backup tight end, would get his first reception of the season. And Anthony Ferkser, former Titan, would get his first reception since 2022 also. Just very weird in that aspect. Random things to point out, but, it is what it is. Brian Branch, again, 10 tackles and 2 pass deflections. Not a terrible game, but by his standards, it probably could have been much, much, much better overall. Especially with them already being down as it is on that front. Malcolm Rodriguez has still not come back, even though he's off of the IR and PUP list. Like, I truly wonder when he is. It just would help them in terms of their backers. I don't know. It'd make them stronger for sure. So that needs to be figured out at some point. But okay. Moving on next to the Chiefs and the Cowboys yesterday. And, I don't know. Main thing about this, really, is that, I don't know, the Chiefs, man, the third down struggles for them. They'd already been struggling across the entire season, and man, in this game, for a good stretch of time, did not get much better. Even with them starting off masterfully in this game, between forcing Dak Prescott into making a terrible mistake with Jordan Hicks' pressure, eventually leading to Jalen Watson getting an interception and spotting them an easy touchdown score from just 37 yards out, with Rashee Rice getting a 27-yard catch to just bang his head right on the goalpost. After a great RPO screen, it don't get much better than that. But seriously, at least offensively especially, I don't know. While they would get a nice conversion for their second touchdown, Travis Kelce getting in on what would be a 4th and goal situation, because they've always done well. Like, that's the weird thing too. Like, what is the dynamic exactly? They don't do great on third downs, but on 4th and short, this season at least, they are one of the better teams in NFL history from that perspective. I don't know. It was just strange. But I will say that the pass rush for the Cowboys could have been a factor here. They definitely started to heat up after giving the Chiefs those couple touchdowns in the first quarter. Like, they just started getting everywhere. Between Jadeveon Clowney making something happen, and also with Dante Fowler Jr. towards the tail end of the half, getting after Patrick Mahomes, even as he's trying to make something happen downfield. And granted, it wasn't successful all the time, and we'll get to that. But they did that for long enough and constantly just held the Chiefs' offense in check. In fact, they didn't get a single point after the first quarter up until the very beginning of the fourth, buying the Cowboys enough time to get themselves a lead. And defensively, also kind of relating this to a different point, I guess it's kind of obvious though, like, the Chiefs might need to reconsider their cornerback core. We can't control Brandin Cooks stepping out of the game with injury. That's not something that can be controlled, right? But everybody else between Trent McDuffie, Jalen Watson, and Chamari Connor as well, dude, they could not hang with the Cowboys wide receivers at all. And in crucial moments there, it was either George Pickens or CeeDee Lamb just making these guys look like completely inferior cornerbacks for some reason. Like, I don't know. It was terrible. Now, yeah, Dak Prescott in some of these cases missed, but more often than not, he found these motherfuckers down the field and just continued to make plays. Like, just simple reads, time and time again, with them not sticking to their assignments, and they just continue to eat off that the whole damn time. I mean, between this catch by CeeDee Lamb from 15 yards out for a touchdown score, or the fact that you had Jalen Watson just continuing to get penalties on him simply because he was so scared of guarding George Pickens up front that he resorted to all these different tactics outside of actually trying to cover the man. Like, it's not like the Cowboys' rushing attack was the greatest, even with Malik Davis getting a nice, clean 43-yard run for a touchdown up the middle of the gap. Although that's more so on Chris Jones not really staying home in that situation and just allowing that free run up the middle. Javonte Williams definitely got some good extra effort plays and just bounced off a few people, but not enough to where we can say that the Cowboys dominated the rushing attack. They didn't. Like, you knew if you were the Chiefs what the game plan was going to be with those perimeter guys, and they just could not stop them whatsoever. And it all culminated in some craziness. Like, not only did this lead to multiple conversions, but especially with this one, like George Pickens, literally. And he is crazy as fuck. I think we understand this at this point. Goodness gracious, man. I mean, dude, between Jalen Watson allowing him to get the ball, spin away from him, and then just turn up the field. And then after he's running for long enough, Trent McDuffie tries to go low to tackle him, and George Pickens clears his ass in the air. He doesn't stay up after this, but that'll definitely be on your highlight reel if you are a Cowboys fan, especially for years to come. That's the kind of shit that was going down in this game for the secondary. And ultimately, when your own offense is struggling to respond, and you have to keep on dealing with this as a defense, it gets difficult. I mean, they would eventually undergo the same thing. Like, all Mahomes is waiting for in that situation. You could see his face towards the tail end of this, because despite all of this, this was a close game too. He's waiting to get himself back into the ball game. And you can't stop George Pickens to save your life. You can't get a crucial turnover on these key downs to give him the ball back. So the fact that George Pickens was able to get Jalen Watson on a slant on this specific play here was no surprise. In fact, like, that alone from Jalen Watson is just weak. Like, this is happening with 2 minutes and 14 seconds left in the ball game. Like, I get that you may not want to give up anything too deep if you are Jalen Watson at this point. But at the same time, even in a third and short situation, man, if you don't fucking press George Pickens, I don't give a fuck what kind of physical advantage he has on you. You need to make sure Yeah, you do what you can to prevent him from getting the ball in close like that. And instead, he's so far backed off of him, all Dak Prescott needed to do was give him a little quick slant, easy throw, and that ended the game right there. That shit is anticlimactic as fuck. And I'm sure that Jalen Watson has already heard it from multiple people at this point. I understand that at that point, when you're dealing with both George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb at the same time, they're both number one caliber wide receivers, and they're both guys that will be able to out-physical most cornerbacks in the NFL. But if you had not watched a single NFL game before, because Jalen Watson is truly a good number 2 cornerback. I'm not going to go out of my way to say elite, but he's really fucking good. And you would not have known that if I just popped up his tape on a big screen and displayed that to somebody. They wouldn't know that he is actually considered a fairly good player as a complimentary cornerback. But I think Jamari Conner needs to flat out go. I don't know what it is with him, dude. He's gotta go. Like, something's gotta give. Something's gotta give. And offensively, it's kind of how it would look like if CeeDee Lamb didn't get hurt so early on, with them trying to utilize him in the rushing attack for some reason. They had a great stretch through, like, I guess from the early to near mid part of the season where they established some very good offensive play. It hasn't been as promising for them the past few weeks, but hey, maybe they're starting to find that back a little bit, even if they got this Chiefs defense, who has actually been all right, all out of sorts in this one. And while the Chiefs found fortune in being able to win their first one-score game this season, last week, that would not ring true, as they would still manage to lose by 3 here. And at least for the Chiefs, you can say that your offense did show out, especially when you needed it to. Like, it kind of got out of hand the game after a little while, but they were still able to chip back in there. And usually with the way that they've been talked about this season, you thought they would have been completely out, given how they were performing, especially for that 2-quarter stretch. But no, they kept on getting after it. Because you just can't really account for the Mahomes magic. You just can't. No matter how hard you try, there's always a point of time in the game where it's going to show up. So whether it's Rashee Rice getting multiple conversions on this drive, including a 3-yard touchdown catch, and then also when they were back down by 10 again following a Brandon Aubrey field goal and the aforementioned mossing of Jamari Conner down the field, like just getting beaten right over the top. Like, it wasn't even hard. It wasn't made difficult on them at all. They just allowed them to go to work, and it's like, dude, that's not okay. But nevertheless, this drive right here just put it all into perspective. It didn't help that Jadeveon Clowney would get the better of them immediately. In a game that saw the offensive line of the Chiefs get even more banged up. Not only was Trey Smith out of this game, and maybe that would have made things a little different on the interior, but you also had Josh Simmons step out of this game with an injury that I'll be talking about in one of the developments later on. Nevertheless, even when you thought the Chiefs were down, no, because in comes Patrick Mahomes, dashing away from both Quinn Williams and Donovan Ajaraku to get over to the side, fucking toss a rocket down the field, and fall down with a wide open Xavier Worthy hauling it in for a 42-yard gain. And as fast as he is, I don't know why he was intent on running out of bounds. I think there were several cuts inside that he probably had the opportunity to make. He's definitely that kind of player. And that would still lead to yet another crazy play with Patrick Mahomes getting yet another scramble and then finding Marquise Brown, even if it is a linebacker, being on him the whole time. That man got up for a spectacular catch in the back of the end zone and some toe drag swag on top of that to get themselves at least somewhat back in the ball game. If only they could have gotten a stop, which they eventually didn't. That would actually be Marquise Brown's first road touchdown score since 2022. It's been a long time. So they got some effort, but not enough to overcome that complete and total slump at that point. And I don't know, it really does all come back to them just not being able to pick up those third downs. Like, almost consistently. Like, fourth and shorts are okay to an extent, but when you are getting backed up as far as the Chiefs have been on some of these, and you still, even though that would change a little bit lately with some of the plays that I did mention, fair enough, they just needed more consistency from that front, and they did not get it, to say the least. So the Cowboys would win 31-28 with Dak Prescott throwing for 320 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception on 69.2% completion. They ran for 137 yards as a team. I think that's slightly misleading, to be honest. They didn't rely that much on Malik Davis after the aforementioned run, and they would get Kevontae Turpin out in space. Fair enough. But the contributions from those two players kind of inflated the overall efforts of everyone. I would think so, at least. Javonte Williams was really held in check for most of this one. CeeDee Lamb had 7 receptions for 112 yards and a touchdown, while George Pickens had 6 receptions for 88 yards and a score. And I think that Nate Burleson brought up a good point, mentioning that, this guy could turn into one of the top receivers in the NFL. I don't think that's really a, wild take to come up with whatsoever. I don't know. It could be a matter of opportunity. But I think he's showing enough to the Cowboys right now to where if they have to make a decision on going and signing him in the offseason, it's going to have to be for the right price, of course. He's going to want the money. But I think you got to take every chance you can get with trying to retain him. We understand a lot of the potential problems that he could cause. But honestly, aside from a few moments of just randomness and immature play, there's really not been anything like that this season that would even scare off the Cowboys from making said move. And, as long as that stays the same, that won't really flare up into anything too crazy at all. As for the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes had 261 passing yards and 4 touchdowns, his second game with at least 4 touchdowns on this season, and also on 67.6% completion. But it just wasn't enough. And again, no matter what went down with the offense in general, you yet again have another case where he's just left on the sideline. And from that standpoint, that worked exactly in the Cowboys' favor. You think on a day that they consistently have football games on, and with the Chiefs getting, honestly, this is one of the first Thanksgiving games that I've seen from them in my lifetime, even with Patrick Mahomes being the quarterback of the team. You thought they were going to allow them for a second to come in their house on their holiday and take a victory from them? Honestly, I thought they were. I didn't know how much of a chance the Cowboys stood in this one, but I mean, hell, they are definitely sending a message to some people out there. They're team determined to try to do great things. But they've still got even tougher teams ahead of them, potentially, just by looking at the season. So they have to continue getting after it. Rashee Rice would have 8 receptions for 92 yards and 2 touchdowns. Xavier Worthy would have 4 receptions for 61 yards. And Travis Kelce would have 5 receptions for 45 yards and a score. Nick Bolton also added 11 tackles. Crazy, too. Because when you think about it, man, even if the season is not over, there are still games to be played, of course. But it's definitely weird to think that in an era where both of these teams have consistently been 2 of the better AFC teams over quite some time, both the Chiefs in this team, the Ravens, with them facing off against the Bengals last night, may not even contend for playoff spots and are in the hunt as of the most recent playoff picture. This game against Cincinnati, man, if I have to sit here and talk about this, because this was one of the most confusing and head-scratching displays that I've ever seen in an NFL game involving a good team. Now, that's pretty fucking ironic, coming from a season in which we've seen multiple good teams, whether it be the Broncos or the Eagles, get themselves in games where they have a clear opportunity to win, and either they do it in the ugliest way imaginable or they fail to win when they were probably favored to do so. Not counting the game that they had against each other. But like, what was this? What was this? Like, it was just, oh man. Like, I'll have my own things to say about this, but honestly, I feel much better off passing this on to an actual Ravens fan that had to endure this shit as much as pretty much everybody else. Because if me, as a Seahawks fan, watching this game yesterday, could come away from this confused and damn near stunned without any idea of what the hell to say about it, then you're much better off hearing some form of ability to resonate in this sense with somebody who was actually a fan of the team. But I will say this, and I'll have my own points when I get back on here, but I will say this, the biggest crime, the biggest takeaway of this game is that for the Bengals, they gave Joe Burrow potentially the cleanest pocket he's ever had as a Cincinnati Bengal in a single game to date. No, I'm serious. At halftime, they mentioned that he was pressured on just 12 of 14. 12 of 26 rather, dropbacks, which was one of the lowest rates he'd ever had in his career with the team. Not to mention, he also slinging 32 passes in the first half as well, the most in a first half for any quarterback this season. They were definitely reliant on the pass game, even though Chase Brown did give them a solid rushing attack in this game. And he has, as broadcast team with Mike Tirico and also Jason Garrett with Chris Collinsworth being out on, I guess, holiday leave. He's still going to return. Don't worry, y'all. Y'all get y'all a dose of Chris Collinsworth this week. Nevertheless, they were trying to get Jamar Chase activated, a person who would still end this game with the most yards per average against any one team in NFL history with a minimum of 8 games. But the thing about that is, even with a clean pocket, and even with the pressure trying to make themselves a presence, but not completely getting there and finishing plays, fair enough, Joe Burrow was still heavily inaccurate, one of his lowest accuracies as an NFL quarterback with these clean pockets. I think at a point it was like 32% or something like that. So you're telling me if you are the Ravens in this situation, you were still in a spot where he was getting clean looks, not making the reads, or completely overshooting passes. Having your defenders make countless plays to make him as inaccurate as possible, or as far below average inaccuracy as possible, and you still got done like this, it's bad. But there were a ton of other things in this game that are completely inexplicable. So I'm just gonna pass it on from here.
This is extremely ridiculous. There's no need to recap what's going on. There's no need to just go over the plays. All you need to know is this is the worst defense in the NFL currently. And they forced 5 turnovers on us. 5 turnovers. Now look, Lamar, he did not have a good game. Okay? I'm a person who defends Lamar Jackson a lot of the times, but he didn't have a good game. Okay, and that's fine. Right? But he had 2 turnovers, 1 interception. That second fumble was the only thing that was his fault. First fumble, offensive line, because of course he can't see his blind side. And then he gets down and then he just fumbles. Still supposed to protect the ball, but that's mostly the offensive line. Second one, he was trying to pump fake a pass down the field, and he just fumbled it. And then the third one, it was when they had like 9 people blitzing him. Right? And then he tries to throw it quickly to Likely, then the ball gets tipped. I mean, what was he supposed to do about this? I have never seen a quarterback get pressured like that before. I've never seen a quarterback have 9 players running full speed at him. It's just crazy. So, I believe this started in the Lions game where they're just throwing everybody at him. And the reason why they're able to do that with success every single time is because they have 2 receivers down the field. Only 2 receivers down the field. Do you really think that you're going to convince them that they should not do this? That they should not bring their whole team at Lamar if you're only pushing 2 players down the field? Like, you're playing their game. You're playing their game. That's not going to work. But I would say, honestly, ever since the Vikings game, this offense has not looked good at all. So you can partially say Lamar, you can say the offensive line, all of that. But this offense as a whole, like, compared to how it was the first 3 weeks of the season, when they were averaging 33 points per game, like, the offense is just looking like a shell of itself. Okay? But let's take it back to the beginning of the year. Okay? This offensive line has been atrocious the whole entire year. Even the year prior, when they statistically were one of the best offensive lines in the league, they were not as good as it looked in the stats because it was mostly Lamar running. But what happens this year is, I don't know if Lamar's just out of shape or if he's just not 100%. He's obviously not 100% because he's been hurt like 2 times throughout this year. Okay? So, Lamar's not 100%. You know this offensive line needs some pieces. They need new reinforcements. But what do? You have 9 to 10 weeks. 9 to 10 weeks to figure out what you want to do with this offensive line. This man, John Harbaugh, just says, no, fuck what y'all gotta say. No, we're too stubborn to make a change. So what happens is, throughout the 9 weeks that we had to sign somebody, we didn't do that. So then, what happens is, we see the effects week by week of that. We see Lamar go down against the Chiefs, And then we see Lamar just miss practices week to week to week. Because this offensive line cannot block a damn thing. If you have issues with covering the Bengals, I'm not even talking about the blitzes anymore. I'm talking about even a 4-man pass rush. The Bengals pass rush is horrible, and they don't even have Trey Hendrickson on the field. So what do? He's still getting sacked by Osai, whoever the fuck that is. And I'm like, bro, this offensive line can't even block 4 players. And you think everything gotta be on Lamar. Yes, he had a bad game, but if you looked at the game, if you saw the context of what happened, he's getting neglected. Like, I'm seeing people in their talk shows talking about, oh yeah, this team has no chemistry. Well, I would say this team doesn't have chemistry. You're right, but this team is too stubborn to make changes. And it's like, naturally, it's going to, affect the way that this offense executes. Like, let's look at our weapons. Because compared to Josh Allen, Lamar gets a lot of criticism for having bad games. Josh Allen doesn't. When he had these bad games against the Dolphins and the Texans, in which he both lost to those teams, actually. But he was like, they were like, oh, Josh Allen doesn't get any help. So let's look at what Lamar Jackson has in terms of help. All right. Now look. DeAndre Hopkins, he should be our X receiver. He is the most consistent receiver catching the ball. But obviously there is flaws to the way that he plays on his team, and it's his speed. He cannot create separation. So when Lamar does get blitzed 8 billion times a game, which he has by far the most pressures by any, compared to any other quarterback in the league. So that happens. And then you barely have people that can create separation. Rashad Bateman, he's a fast player, but he cannot create separation consistently himself. Zay Flowers, our shortest and smallest receiver on the team, is the only player that can consistently create separation against man coverage, or in general. Lamar Jackson, right? You cannot put all this blame on him, because they should know. When Lamar Jackson thinks that he's supposed to play hero ball, he is going to make mistakes. Y'all should have known this. Y'all should have known this. I watched this dude since 2018. And I've figured out that when Lamar Jackson feels the need to play hero ball, he makes mistakes. And that's basically a lot of these quarterbacks in the first place. Right? But y'all should know that. Y'all should build a system around Lamar that prevents him from feeling the need to do that. In 2024, Lamar had 41 passing touchdowns and 4 interceptions. Okay? You know that the defense is going to do everything in their power to defend both Lamar and Derrick Henry. What did you do? You did not get an experienced young receiver that is top tier. That could be that could complement Lamar and Derrick Henry. Zay Flowers, he's a good player for this team. He's a good receiver. But he is not that guy. He is not a number 1 receiver. On a good team, on a good offense, he is a slot receiver. Okay? He would be the best. He would be one of the best receivers in the league if he was a slot receiver. I hope people understand that. But this is all because they don't want to spend money on getting weapons. Actual weapons. Rashad Bateman. I would have been fine if they traded Rashad Bateman. Right? But this is what's going on, right? They kept Rashad Bateman. He's getting hurt left and right, right? Who else do you have? You have DeAndre Hopkins, you have Tylan Wallace, and you have Tez Walker. These guys cannot create separation themselves. So if you're Lamar Jackson, what do you do? What do you do? Because you get paid $77 million. $77 million next season. With them, like, just neglecting the protection around you in terms of the offensive line, in terms of generating actual weapons and being aggressive in free agency in general. Like, the only person they got out of free agency was Draymond Jones. And I forgot number 12. I forgot his name. I'll get Alohi Gilman. Yes, Alohi Gilman. Okay? So, these are defensive players that we didn't need. But they're offensive players that we do need as well. But you're so worried about losing draft picks that you just neglect the offense. Yes, your culture is predicated on funding the defense and not worried about the offense so much. That's what has been the case for the past forever, to be honest with you. But how are you going to adjust to modern day offense, to modern day defenses, actually, if you cannot generate a successful offense around Lamar? In 2019, when he won his first MVP, you should have built a super team around him right then and there. Jalen Hurts didn't even have to win an MVP for them to build a super team around him on offense. And look at how their defense is playing. So there's no excuse. They're just scared to fail, basically. They're just scared to miss. It is possible to do that, Eric DeCosta. And John Harbaugh, each and every time, has mismanaged this team. Like, somehow, some way, they cannot find a way to execute. Especially when it's the playoffs. You see these issues going on in the playoffs, like, already. Like, almost every time we're in the playoffs, we deal with these same issues. Fumbling, turning the ball over, just not capitalizing off of their mistakes. All right? So it just gets to a point, like, when we're losing against teams like the Bengals, I get it, they have Joe Burrow, but they have the worst defense, and we historically played very well against them. We were 6-1 against Joe Burrow. Now we're 6-2. We played them in 2 weeks. We play the Steelers next week, and then we play the Bengals. Okay? So, we lost 32-14. We are 6-6. We're 2-1 in the division, along with the Steelers and now the Bengals. The Bengals are 4-8. All they had to do is lose one more game, and they're irrelevant in this division. Okay? And that could be us. We could eliminate them. But we got to look forward to the Steelers game. Because if we're letting the Bengals sack us 3 times, if we're letting the Bengals force 5 turnovers on us, which they didn't even really force it. It was just us doing dumb shit ourselves. It was just us. We're beating ourselves. I don't know if we're just cocky against these type of teams, because we shouldn't have had bad offensive games against the Bengals nor the Jets. And we did. I don't know if it's just us being cocky or what. But that just needs to stop. Because the Ravens are just acting like they can afford to lose games. They can't. They cannot afford to lose games. So guess what? You have the best pass rushing team in the league that you have to face in 10 days. You have 10 days to figure this out. All right? And I expect them to do better because they have Lamar on their team. Okay? But this blitz that has been plaguing this offense, this same blitz, bringing everybody on him, that's been plaguing this offense for the past 10 weeks. They have to find some type of answer for that. They have to. If they cannot find an answer for that, they're probably going to miss the playoffs. And especially against the Steelers. If we lose to the Steelers and they just run that every single time, what do you think that we're going to do? Next game against the Steelers, it will be an ugly game. It will be an ugly game. They will try to take advantage of the mistakes that we made against the Bengals, knowing that they are a better defense. It's going to be an ugly game. It's going to be a low-scoring game. Lamar is just going to have to find a way. And we keep saying this every single time, but again, yes, Lamar did some bad things this game, and not to mention the overthrows that he's had. But not only is he not 100%, he's not even comfortable playing. He's not even comfortable dropping back because he knows that he's going to get sacked within a second. He's had issues with his knee that has prevented himself from, running the ball as consistently as he still should. And that's just a problem that this team has yet to fix. They don't care enough about Lamar, apparently, to fix that. Your best player. But now he's going to have to take up all the heat, in mainstream media just because of them. Because of them. But again, he gets paid $77 million next year. We're not going to be able to sign anybody. You had all this, you had all this time to build a super team around Lamar Jackson. You had while this Super Bowl window was open, which started in 2019 and 2020. You spent all this time not doing anything for Lamar. I don't want to hear nothing about, they had a number 1 overall defense, all this type of. I don't want to hear that. You just think that he can just play on mediocre offenses every single year and just, I guess, I don't know, just cover everybody else's flaws and mistakes and be Superman? This coach, Harbaugh, you don't want him to be Superman. But with the way that we're executing, with the way that our offense is designed, he's going to have to. It's everything that this dude Harbaugh says is a contradiction to itself. And it does not make any type of sense. So, future schedules. We got the Steelers. We got the Bengals. I believe we got the Patriots after that. The Packers, and then the Steelers again. This instantly turned into one of the hardest remaining schedules that we've ever had. Especially given the fact that we had to play the same Bengals team that beat our ass after we played the Steelers, which is arguably our best division opponent. So we had to find a way. But we cannot afford to lose any game against our divisional opponents. If we were to lose another game, I'd hope it would be against the Packers or the Patriots. But if we lose against the Steelers one time, it's not looking good. All right. So today is Sunday not today. Today is not Sunday, but today is Friday. On Sunday, the Steelers play the Bills. I don't see them beating the Bills. So we will probably be number 1 in our division again. But it's not a comfortable number 1 in the division at all. This is reminding me of the 2022 NFC South. Okay? We just need to fix, as a Ravens fan, we just need to fix whatever is going on. We don't have chemistry at all. We don't have go-to plays. We don't have gimme plays. All right? And then you can think of all the positives that Lamar has done. It's been taken away by penalties or drops. So you can see the 0 touchdowns, 3 turnovers, as a horrible game. But Lamar literally had great plays that has been removed by drops or penalties. So it's like, what do you want Lamar to do about that? Lamar has no momentum. He has no momentum. Because players are not giving momentum. The plays aren't either. I blame Tom Monken. I blame John Harbaugh. I blame Eric DeCosta. I blame all of these players. I do not blame the defense because they can only do so much. Like, they can only do so much. Because you're sitting up, they're doing well the whole first half. Y'all did not even do anything on offense with the stops. They started, the Bengals legitimately started at the 7-yard line, I believe, because of a fumble. They held them to a field goal, and y'all did nothing about it the drive after. You think that that's, helping the defense out? Y'all think that that's going to make the defense happy or just want to play better? No, that's not. So this whole season, like, if it's not one, it's the other. If it's not the defense messing up, it's the offense messing up. We cannot have a perfect game. We can't. Nor can we lose in regular fashions. We always have to lose in the most unpredictable ways ever because of the way that we execute and because of the way that these players are coached. Doesn't make sense. But yeah, they have to stop acting like they can throw games. They can't throw games at all. But that's all I gotta say.
We often hear the phrase about people just going around and trying shit as well. And the way in which some of these turnovers occurred is just still wild to me. Because, yeah, sack fumbles sometimes can be excused, fine, although they had Joseph Asai out there looking like a madman. He's consistently been looking for this shit for quite a long time. But even any edge rusher in the NFL can honestly make a play when you are allowing, like Ronnie Stanley did towards the end of the half, getting an insta-sack. Instant pressure. No resistance offered whatsoever. That was kind of weird. But what isn't in some of these cases, literally, this entire play right here is just wild to me because, for one, likely gets the ball, he gets down the field past bitch-ass Geno Stone, fair enough. He's not fast enough. He's trying to hawk his ass down, but fails to do so. Okay, likely is 1 yard away from the touchdown. And none other that can't tackle Jordan Battle fucking uses helicopter arms to punch the ball out at the goal line as he's trying to cross into the end zone, and it just falls out on the back for a touchback. That is just the kind of stuff that you can't teach at all, to the extent that as I'm looking at this specific drop with this play on it, the description for this is unknown. Even Fox Sports does not know how to explain what the fuck happened on the play. And it's showing up as unknown on the fucking description. What you cannot make that up. And then you have another Lamar Jackson fumble, fair enough, but when you have that kind of pressure screaming in your face, not many quarterbacks are going to be able to do much of anything. And as a Seahawks fan, again, we literally just came off of dealing with Sam Darnold throwing 4 interceptions against the Rams. And that game was still closer than this one. But it just goes to show that you consistently turning the ball over like this at that kind of clip is not going to help you win ball games. And the fact that consistently the worst defense in the NFL, they had a graphic of every fucking kind of Thanksgiving food being burned because of how bad the defense is, and those niggas did that. But they will stand a chance against the Pats. It's kind of hard to really take that seriously. Like, this interception by Lamar Jackson also is, like, that's kind of tough, to be honest. I mean, likely supposed to be handling some person. Like, in a separate case, Miles Murphy, I think, a guy that they mentioned the Bengals drafted, I think got one of his first NFL sacks last night. Unless I'm tripping, because I can check out this Football Reference. I think the case is that he has been hurt for a little bit and hasn't really gotten a lot of the reps. Okay, well, this season he's had 2.5 sacks. But for a guy that rarely has generated pressure and has honestly played consistently, you're letting that guy finally reach the 5-sack threshold with his contribution last night. Doesn't really make any sense to me. But you have a different defensive lineman trying to go up against Isaiah Likely, and granted, he was supposed to go all the way out. So he is engaged in this block, getting worked inside by the same lineman. And he just gets over top of him. Jumps with absolute freedom, which should not happen. And thus the pick takes place. But even past all of that, we just got some truly undisciplined football. And I think that's the core identity of this for the Ravens. And yeah, we're dealing with the Bengals on this front defensively, but it's like, dude, the amount of times they're just so numerous. I mean, literally, they went from a touchdown catch in a span of a drive that lasted only a minute long. They went from a touchdown pass because for some reason Zay Flowers didn't think his speed was enough, even with DJ Turner II being a speedy cornerback himself. You didn't need to push off. You also just had countless drops in this game and then aforementioned instances with players just not staying on their assignments whatsoever. But also Zay Flowers, from this standpoint, no. The comparison is constantly between him and Jackson Smith and Jigba. Fair enough. They came from the same draft class. Jackson Smith and Jigba also was a slot receiver for a bit of time and also could afford to be with the way in which the Seahawks built around him. Now, sans, for whatever you may consider Tyler Lockett at this point, man was still a sure-handed wide receiver, just getting less reps over time. And DK Metcalf, of course, is a bigger body, taking on number one assignments. They gradually worked that man up over years, and now we see what exactly Jackson Smith and Jigba is doing in the NFL, albeit with a given frame. I don't know, the Ravens definitely had their opportunities to do it in the same way if they were intent on doing it. But, of course, that hasn't really proven to be the case. The thing with Zay Flowers, more than anything else, is just why the hell does he feel the consistent need to activate human joystick style play? I don't really understand it. All of these herky-jerky movements, I understand that the man is fast. Sometimes it's just about getting down. And yet, time and time again, in all of these situations, even this play, he's not suspecting Davis to be behind him, fair enough, but he punches the ball out, and DJ Turner II gets it back, even when Travis Jones literally got a fucking slide tackle on Samaje Perine to give them the ball back. They didn't do anything. I mean, in this game of chaos, somehow this ended up being a blowout, but honestly, for both teams, it just got wild. I mean, all of this is literally happening on home turf. As I hear multiple Bengals fans, they get, I guess, audio because you have different receptors picking up speech as things are recording, right? You can't control that all the time. You get hot mics, of course. You have multiple Bengals fans in what is a mostly cleared out Ravens stadium at this point. Think about that. Chanting "Who dat?" That is just something that is so probably infuriating to multiple Baltimore fans. And there is nothing you can do about it if they're going to walk into your house and do that to you. Eating cold-ass turkey and a crab leg on your home turf after the game in just a load of different chaos. You got Asah fucking slobbering and spitting all over the place. Jamar Chase smacking and spitting all over the place. Just diving into good food after whipping your ass. Like, that is just some shit you can't live down. It can't happen. And this is not something that can be replicated. That's for damn sure. It'd be hard to do that for any team. And I mean, I don't know. There's just way too much context in this one. Way too much. Like, I don't even need to get into the numbers. But as I said, to get back to my point earlier about Joe Burrow failing to do this, completed just 52.2% of his passes. I thought the man was going to reach 55 passing attempts, damn near. He was not that accurate. It did look sloppy at times. Even though Jason Garrett, former Cowboys quarterback himself, tried his own semblance of the Chris Collinsworth glaze. Talking about a lack of rust with Joe Burrow, like, yeah, there was. It was not pretty for him. Still, though, when you can have Roquan Smith, even with the defense playing relatively well, the fact that there was such miscommunication on Andre Yoshivaz's touchdown, that Roquan Smith was guarded up against him, not something that should ever be taking place. And Malachi Starks was out of position at that point to do much of anything about it. Just consistently punching yourselves in the gut and preventing yourselves from winning a ball game that you probably will have to more often than not. You gotta perform way better than that, because you would not want to give anybody a leg up or a potential tiebreaker over you, as you are in the same fight for a playoff race right now. Like, it's not good. One thing of solace to note is that DeAndre Hopkins, despite all of this, would get his 1,000th career NFL catch. It took them long enough to get it to him. But I guess if there's anything about this game that should give you hope, it's that? Maybe? I don't know. All right. To get into some other developments that carried on from last week, somewhat briefly, the Broncos would extend Wil Lutz to a 3-year contract extension. Makes sense. He has had his down moments in Denver, of course, but for the most part, he's been as consistent as he was. Like, I don't think there's been much of any kind of regression. In fact, in his 3 years in Denver, he's gotten better. He's been more accurate in terms of field goal percentage. Like 4 percentage points higher, we're talking about, in just half the fucking time. He's got better PAT conversion rate as well. Like, it's been nothing but smooth sailing for the most part in Denver. So, you have a reliable kicker like that. It's probably not worth a lot, and they don't have the contract details in terms of his total sum on display. But, once you have a kicker doing those kinds of things, you're going to do everything in your power to retain him. You should. Tremaine Edmunds is going to miss at least the next 4 to 6 weeks to a groin injury. So he's going to be out for this game as well against the Eagles today. That could hurt the Bears a little bit, but they've had some solid defensive effort on their own end. So that could still make things pretty intriguing. The Niners would void guaranteed money in Brandon Aiyuk's contract for next season. I'd heard multiple things about it, watched multiple videos about it. My thing is this: it's not surprising. The fact that the man has simply not played. He's not been available. It is always about, what have you done for me lately? And look, I understand that his season in 2023 was masterful. But since then, all he's done is gotten himself in poor favor with the front office, with some of the shit that he's been talking about, out of frustration, sure, and then he's just not been healthy since that point. Can you really expect them to fully invest in Aiyuk if questions about his desire to be there were already circulating before then? And then, not to mention, he has not done anything to increase his value to the team. If anything, that has been diminished as he's consistently gotten hurt. That's not surprising at all. It definitely is tough for him, and you want him to go out there and prove himself. But it feels like that is what it's going to have to take at this point. And even that, with these issues going on, they mentioned he still hasn't been called up off IR. He's still not even close to returning. So I don't know how much more room they'd be willing to give. Like, this is fair on their part. T. Higgins would still be out of last night's game, dealing with a concussion injury he suffered on the last game the Bengals had. Brandin Cooks was able to find a kidney donor and get his transplant to go through. So that's definitely a good thing. The Raiders would name Greg Olson as an interim coach for Las Vegas. Not too familiar with him, and he's not to be mistaken with the color commentator in Greg Olson. Just gotta clear that up. The Giants would fire defensive coordinator Shane Bowen. Yeah. Fair play, fair enough. Like, at some point, when your defense is consistently as bad as it has been for the Giants this season, and when you are part of the reason, time and time again, while you're consistently blowing fourth quarter leads, man, like, yeah, you gotta get out of there. He's just not been viewed as good by really anybody, and he is very much a wanted man in some Giants fan circles, of course. Like, they do not like his ass. I guess it was only a matter of time. This is probably something that they should have did. Shit, everything does kind of go back to the Broncos game, right? If you see a team give up 33 points in one quarter of play, you'd probably be emboldened, to let somebody go. People were already calling for his job at that point, and yet for some delusional ass reason, they decided to hold on to him. Like, he's already, with that game alone, it doesn't, it's kind of unfair to cast all this different stuff on just one game. But look, if he, as a defensive coordinator, is tasked with the concept of going through a full 4 quarters of play without letting the offense of the Broncos get the upper hand on you, and doing as best as you can to match them and counter them, you giving up 33 points in your responsibility is enough, or should have been enough, to have the Giants see that is exactly what you were. The fans knew it right then and right there that he is exactly who the hell they thought he was. And he's done nothing but show you who he is. So why would you invest in him for an even longer time, believing that he could somehow outperform those standards, lackluster as they might have been? It's a bit bold. Like, come on. Will Campbell is believed to have suffered an MCL sprain. I think the Patriots at this point, with that recent report, are contemplating putting him on IR. The thing is, I don't think if they did that this late in the season, they'd be able to get him back. And, they've got their fair share of games to handle, especially when it comes to keeping the Bills staved off, even though, man, there's a good enough a distance between those two teams, so where the Patriots might be okay. They're trying to close out, though. So they may want him back and may not be as willing to do it. But they're definitely going to be down without him for a little bit of time, at least. The Saints would sign Cade York after working out Justin Tucker, who is now back in the NFL, at least off of the suspension that he had to serve this season. Stupid ass niggas. Stupid. Just dumb. Like, you want to settle for some mid, bro? Like, look, I do get that Justin Tucker is older. And yes, we all understand how low, in fact, maybe rock bottom for that man, even outside of just the off the field shit, we understand that, believe me. But on the field, you saw that he wasn't as automatic as he used to be. Scary sign, especially for Ravens fans that had to endure that. All I'm saying is, off reputation alone, you're trusting Cade York over Justin Tucker. I don't care how bad his season was last year. Cade York's worst season will probably somewhat compare to Justin Tucker's last year at best. Or wait, no, I'm not even phrasing it right. You get the idea. Justin Tucker runs laps around this man. There is no way. There's no shot. And you think that Cade York is also an upgrade over Blake Group? Maybe. But what is it with the Saints? Like, y'all lost out on Wil Lutz, and since then, it's just been, dysfunctional organization now, right? That's not a surprise. But between losing Wil Lutz and Drew Brees, man, it's been nothing but chaos in that organization. All to just produce very little, to say the least. Baker may... okay, I did mention that. Whoa, hold on. All right. The Broncos would sign center Luke Wattenberg to a 4-year, $48 million contract extension, although I'm not too familiar with him. But the way in which the Broncos have been able to at least run the football this season, I could see where the value may lie for him. He's not getting paid crazy amount of money either. In terms of center contracts, he'd probably be on the lower end. And, for the Broncos at this point, that's not a terrible thing. The Bills would sign Brandin Cooks after he was cut from the Saints practice squad. So Brandin Cooks there now, I mean, I don't know. You still need Keon Coleman to get his fucking shit together. You still need that. I don't know what role Brandin Cooks would truly fit here. Shakir is not only your number 2 right now, but probably your slot man. Or, if everyone's healthy, you're probably interchanging Curtis Samuel and Elijah Moore, and I guess it's been Tyrell Shavers as of late there. Not a lot of great names to say the least. Brandin Cooks at this state of his career may not really be able to put them over the top on that front. He could work as a number 2, but then you'd be, and honestly, they may be comfortable with that. Khalil Shakir, with the damage that he can do after the catch, you probably do want him as a slot man. It's just, I don't know. They've got some work to figure it out. Like, usually, if we were talking about a few years ago with Brandin Cooks, like, it'd probably be a different conversation, but I don't know. He's just not been able to find a consistent role with a team as of late. And if the fucking Saints, of all teams, are still thinking, even with losing Rashid Shaheed and having Brandin Cooks at their disposal, that he doesn't fit with them, is there a chance for him to really fit with this Bills team? That'll have to be figured out. For surely. The Lions definitely could have used this yesterday, but that would definitely not be in alignment with NFL rules, as Frank Ragnow would unretire and the former center would sign back with Detroit. Chances are they'll probably be able to get him for their next match. They just gotta go through a lot of paperwork and things like that. It's never that easy. It's never that easy. And then Daniel Jones, well, he was still practicing on it, as a recent report would state, but per Adam Schefter, he is dealing with a fractured fibula. I guess they'll continue to work him out, see if he's up to speed. I guess he's planning on playing. But they still gotta, say what you want about the last few games from Daniel Jones, but he's still their guy right now. And this late in the season, I really can't believe this. I really can't believe this. I thought that Anthony Richardson had a great chance of getting his starting job back. That hasn't happened to this point, and it's not going to happen. Like, the Colts are seriously contenders, regardless of what you want to say about how they're getting these wins against subpar football teams. They've already established something, even if it's kind of deteriorating slowly, for their team right now. And Daniel Jones, by and large, along with the whole flow of the offense. Like, to change that around right now and move on to having Anthony Richardson in there would undo just about everything they've worked towards. They could not afford to do that. So, for that sake, instead of having Anthony Richardson Sr. play potentially December and early January football, if you can believe that, in fact, you probably dread it as a Colts fan. To have Anthony Richardson Sr. not play a single game this season, and coming off of dealing with his own injuries as a backup, get in there for potential postseason play with what he's shown you as a regular season player. That would not be too fun. You need him healthy in that case. You need him healthy. You do not want that to deal with that. You don't. I can assure you. And Josh Simmons, as I mentioned, would deal with an injury, fractured and dislocated wrist, per multiple reports, including on the NFL.com website. So he is also likely to miss some time. He's been a solid tackle for them when healthy, but I mean, teams passed up on him in the NFL draft with, the fact that he'd been dealing with some injury problems, and, they're not all on him, right? But it's still a little bit of a thing that's going on right now. You want him at his healthiest, so they're going to monitor that and make sure that he's all good to go before even thinking about returning to NFL play. But that'll do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.